It might be my internet, which is the reason why we took on this project.
Okay.
It just may be that.
Okay, that will do it. All right,
Right.
just all righty. Good morning, everyone. This is Valerie Leonard. I'm the founder of nonprofit Utopia. I want to welcome you and thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to everyone on YouTube Live. Thank you to everyone on Facebook Live, Periscope, and all the other instruments, right? So today we're going to continue to celebrate our Community Networks Month. As you know, from time to time, we have talked about strategic planning, we've talked about leadership development, and all of those topics have really helped us to lay a really good foundation for today's topic. A couple of weeks ago, we had a discussion about bringing community networks in, working with our local schools and having our nonprofit organizations actually fill in the gaps for our students. And we continued that discussion last week. This week, we're going to focus on using community networks to articulate the community's broadband vision. And today's guest, we've got Valerie. She's the lead steward for the Neighborhood Network Alliance. We've got Matt Schmit, director of the Illinois Office of Broadband, and Dr. Ronda, is it Sauget or Sauget?
Sauget.
Sauget, and she is the executive director and CEO of Leadership Council Southwest Illinois. So without further ado, I'm going to have them to come to us in their own way. I want to thank them so much. And we're going to start with Valerie, and then we'll go with Ronda, and then we'll go with Matt. All righty. So without further ado, Val, let her rip.
Well, my name is Valerie. I am the lead steward of the Neighborhood Network Alliance. We are what most people would say, a block club organization. However, we are looking at the power of block clubs and analyzing how effective they are right now in transitioning from block clubs to networks to attract the next generation of leaders who are not involved in their communities because of the stigma that we have for block clubs. We decided as a block club, and we do have access to over 700 block clubs collectively around the Southeast side with block club partners that we have. We have also decided that with this broadband project that we're taking on, we could also lead in that area because broadband is definitely a block by block, neighbor by neighbor experience. So what we're looking to do is see how we can best serve our communities with this pilot that we consider a pilot for South Shore and be able to write the book on best practices on how we deal with it from a legislation point of view and even a community serving a way to serve our own community in terms of just having our own thing.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming out.
You're welcome.
All right. Ronda, you're on.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. My name is Ronda Sauget, and I'm the Executive Director and CEO of the Leadership Council, Southwestern Illinois. We're the second largest population center in the state of Illinois. And our mission is really to unite the region for growth. And we have over 10 committees working on a lot of different areas to create a healthy ecosystem for our communities, businesses, and residents here. And we have been very successful in a lot of infrastructure projects for our region. And in our education committee, we had a lot of educational leaders who were really struggling with connectivity, especially during the COVID period for e-learning in our urban, suburban, and our rural areas. Especially as so many people went remotely for work, e-learning, telemedicine, and so on. We also heard a lot of comments from our military base, Scott Air Force Base, of the connectivity issues as people started working from home. So, normal connectivity in the area might have been okay, but as everybody went on our systems, that caused significant lack of connectivity and reliability in many of our regional areas for so many people. And so we're just really excited to work with Matt, the Office of Broadband, and the Benton Institute on this project. Just really excited, and making this a success for our region. So that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Thank you. And now we'll hear from Matt Schmit.
All right. Hey, everybody. This is Matt Schmit. I'm the director of the Illinois Office of Broadband, and I practice what we preach. And so I'm coming to you live from my car, running errands here. I've got 2 little girls under the age of 2 years old. The youngest is 7 weeks. So life is crazy right now. So thanks for bearing with me. But I will always talk broadband any chance I get. And I guess by way of background, I come to you from Minnesota, actually, where I have been working in broadband for almost 20 years, wearing different hats. I was a researcher at the University of Minnesota. I also did work in the legislature as a state senator for a term. And then I've done some consulting over the years too. And so with that experience and the opportunity that Illinois has created with its nation-leading Connect Illinois Broadband Infrastructure Grant Program, $400 million committed to improving broadband around the state, it got my attention. And so we're really excited to be setting up the Illinois Office of Broadband. We're about a year old, and we've got, first of all, our infrastructure grant program with 1 round under its belt, but also some really important supporting programs, such as the Illinois Connected Communities that Dr. Sauget just referenced. And so I'm really looking forward to talking about that with the time we have together today. And we'll have to be careful. I can go on and on about broadband, so I'll stop myself right there. Nice to be with you all today.
Okay, awesome, awesome. So this question is for everyone. We want to get a sense from your various perspectives of what the current lay of the land is and what drove you to actually apply for the funds or actually help out with the funds. So Dr. Sauget, let's start with you.
Wonderful. Well, we are struggling in our area with connectivity and the digital divide. It's been just a huge challenge for our region. Some communities might have fiber connections and they may be doing okay, but we hear so often and far too often during COVID about many communities that have no connectivity or lack of reliability or consistency, and rural and urban communities. And this really holds back those communities from economic development and so many other things. And so we need more diversity and inclusion in this effort, period. In one underserved Hispanic community, we have over 600 families who've never had internet connectivity in their community. And so those children struggle, the families struggle, and we just need to do a far better job to bring that to everyone universally. And so, knowledge is power that will really enable our communities and people to do better and have sustainable incomes. And so this is a huge part of our economic development initiative, and we could not be more delighted to participate.
Okay, awesome. Looks like we lost Val for a minute. Matt, this is par for the course, right?
That's right. We're nimble here today. So yeah. And I think, this experience with different platforms over the last 6 months, trying to stay connected during the pandemic, I think it really shines a light on just the challenge that we have in front of us. We've got some work to do on the broadband connectivity front. And so that, I guess, is a good segue to the lay of the landscape here in Illinois. We've got, we're blessed that we have some great connectivity in lots of parts of the states. In adoption and utilization is on par. But so many of our fellow Illinoisans are missing out, and they're not able to access the internet at appropriate speeds or reliability. Maybe affordability is a challenge. Likewise, we may not have the digital skills and the programming in place to get the most out of the connectivity we have. And so we're not starting from square one. We do have a lot of good things happening in Illinois. But from an equity perspective, we want to make sure that we're all on equal footing and that we're able to compete fully in the 21st century. And in order to do that, we've got to take stock of where we're at. And so right now we have a mapping partner that's helping us get much better broadband access maps than are currently available through the Federal Communications Commission. And so we're hoping at the end of this month and then updating regularly that we'll have, great trove of maps to share with, state stakeholders around Illinois, but also individual communities that want to kind of dig deep and get a better sense as to where the broadband access is and is not in their local areas. And so that's one piece that we're starting from square one, get a better sense as to where broadband is and isn't, so that as we start to make these targeted investments over time through our grant programs, we can direct dollars appropriately, and importantly, that we can track our progress over time. And so I kind of look at this whole, conversation, holistically. It's not just about the access, but you also have to take into account the affordability question, the adoption question, and also the utilization question. So we can talk a little bit more about during our time together. But if I could stress one thing, it's a holistic approach to broadband is what's going to put us in a position to compete in the 21st century.
Okay, great. Okay, Val, we're talking about, giving us a sense for the lay of the land. What drove you here? And when I say here, we're looking at the planning process and looking at, what's going on in the South Shore community that drove you to this.
Well, it was a couple things. One, we had a gentleman who wanted to create broadband in South Shore at one time. He wanted to work with us. Well, I wouldn't even say he wanted to work with us, but he wanted to bring broadband to South Shore, but he didn't want to work with the community. And because we have a technology team that's working on something else, it just lit their fire to say, well, what else is out there? So they began to go to different workshops, get involved, and a couple of them were already involved in different things. So when the relationship didn't pan out the way that we thought it would in terms of being a community partner, this opportunity came about, and they said, hey, there's an opportunity to educate the community and do our own strategic plan and possibly create our own prop services to the community. So that's pretty much where it came from. In terms of the lay of the land, this is my tagline. We're paying premium prices and we're getting third world service. As you can see, I was just kicked off. I had to use my cell phone just to get on, and I literally couldn't. I have 3 lanes of Wi-Fi, and why am I using my phone? So these are reasons. I'm not the only one in this struggle. This is the thing. It's not just me. Then we have our senior base who, if this happened to a senior who's not really that's not so tech savvy, they probably throw their computer away. So it's all of those type of things that we feel like there's a huge digital divide, especially in South Shore, because we have an aging community. And it's hard to get them to even open up an email, less known, try to figure out how to get educated on the next wave that the world is going into. And that's digital everything from communications to dollar bills. And so we just have to figure out.
Okay, I think she has definitely demonstrated the point. She has demonstrated her point. And while we wait for Val to come back, Matt, I want to talk a little bit about some of the programs that you have. Oh, you know what? Val is back. Let's let her finish. Okay, you're back.
Is that happening because we're talking about broadband?
It might be. I think you're giving a strong case. You're making a strong case for the need for broadband and improved services.
Yes. So, that's one thing. And along with what, with the schools pretty much are about to turn digital, we're looking at like, how does this affect, low income households? How does this affect parents who are not educators or may not have the capacity to educate their children? What does that storyline look like? We want to tell our story around broadband in education as well in South Shore.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. And I have a follow-up question for later on, but that's very intriguing to me.
Okay.
All righty. So, Matt, the Illinois Office of Broadband has a number of programs in education, K-12, going all the way up through college, and working with the University of Illinois Extension programs. Can you tell us a little bit about the grant program that's supporting, organizations like Val as well as Dr. Sauget's?
Yeah, the Illinois Connected Communities program, I'm really excited about it. It's modestly funded relative to our huge infrastructure grant program, but I think this Illinois Connected Communities program can do an incredible amount of good for communities that know they want to be in a better position when it comes to thinking about better access or adoption or utilization. And so the whole point of this is to help a community build capacity among its champions and in different parts of the community, and then also step forth on planning. And so we have 12 communities ranging from neighborhoods in Chicago to entire kind of economic development regions. So 12 is the initial cohort. And each of the 12 communities has a chance to engage with an expert consultant for 50 plus hours of essentially free consultative services. They also have access to a host of organizations and experts nationally on the different topics of access, adoption, utilization, so basically all things broadband. And importantly, there's access to this best practice kind of curriculum. And so educating themselves on what's out there, what other communities are doing, what sorts of next steps can be taken, and how to take them. And importantly, a community-wide conversation that brings stakeholders into the conversation so that throughout the course of this process, you're identifying and striving towards a shared vision. And one that is actionable, something that you can actually do something about. And so the final tangible outcome of this 12-month engagement is a broadband strategic plan that is oriented towards that community and identifies the vision and the action steps to make that vision a reality. And so I'm really excited about this because you look at our infrastructure broadband grant program, not all communities are positioned to take advantage of that. And so we want to make sure that we're doing what we can to help communities, improve, their understanding, build their capacity around having a stronger seat at the table when it comes to infrastructure improvement. But also when you look at other important areas of the broadband conversation, the adoption, getting folks to sign up, participate in free or low cost programs that are available, and then what do we do with the internet? What do we have it? Having that holistic conversation is really important, and that's already becoming a theme of my comments here today. But that's really the thrust of this Illinois Connected Communities program, and we're looking forward to building off of the momentum that's already been created. And Dr. Sauget, I mean, you've got already early wins, tied to this program and in your own hustle, and so we're really excited for what this program is going to produce for our communities statewide.
Okay, great. So, Dr. Sauget, we're really interested in hearing about those early wins. And can you tell us about your process?
Oh, my goodness, yes. So we're really excited to also partner with PCs for People. And so that is an amazing group that brings PCs to people who need them, whether it's women, underserved communities, veterans, elderly. And so we're working with them to get all of that set up. And that's an amazing opportunity for our region and couldn't be more thrilled. On the strategic planning side, we are working really hard. We have a large coalition of business, industry, community, education, and military leaders that is helping us to put together our steering committee for our strategic planning initiative, and then we will be conducting a lot of survey work to gather a lot of the information needed to put together our strategic plan, which is really critical. In addition to that, we're doing a lot of research with people just around the country who've had to overcome this challenge, and we've been learning a lot about what other states have done, and we hope to explore opportunities on some of the successes they have, and can that be successful here? And so with what we're doing, just that connectivity, as Matt had discussed, bringing people together to address those issues is really incredibly important to our region. Prior to this initiative, we did not have a regional initiative to bring everybody together, and the Illinois Connected Communities program has enabled us to do that in a very, very defined way. So we couldn't be more delighted with the opportunity to work with the team.
Awesome. All right, Val, let us know what's going on in South Shore.
I was kicked off. I don't know what the question was.
We're talking about the planning process in South Shore.
Oh, okay. So we have put our planning process in place, and it starts from July to November. That's basically information among our digital ambassadors that we are considering people in the community to help get the word out and let folks know that we are doing this, and just information about just getting educated about broadband. And then from January 2021 through February, that's pretty much where April, that's where the community members are really going to get the opportunity to participate. May, we're looking at how we become owners of what we're talking about, and the collaboration to be finalized and the strategic plan, and look at how we could create our action plan to address the challenges to broadband from access, adoption, and usage. So we have this whole timeline and plan.
Okay, and I'm sure Val is going to be joining us. She will be joining us again. But while we're waiting for Val, Matt, can you tell us a little bit more about the educational programs that you guys have? I know you go from K to 12 all the way up to U of I Extension. How are you working in the communities? Oh, wait. Here's Val. Okay, Val. Huh? You give up? No.
They are not right now.
Okay.
So where did I leave off at?
Okay, you're talking about the planning process, and I was going to ask you a question as to who the major players are and whether or not there's any planning infrastructure in the community already.
Yeah, so we have a coalition of churches, the South Shore Chamber, and organizations, a youth organization, Lost Boys, that we just brought them on to help us with the youth component of that. And we have the South Shore Chamber to be the liaison for the businesses. We have a coalition. We have one lead that has a coalition of churches, and that's Pastor Turner. And then we have Block Club area council leaders, and which is people who are in a 15 to 40 block radius, and they kind of manage that area in South Shore.
Okay. All righty. So Matt, you're always on standby. So can you tell us about some of the education programs for the Illinois Office of Broadband? I can't hear you. Can you?
I'm sorry about that. I muted myself by accident. So I was telling a joke about how with broadband, we always are focusing on the always-on aspect of the service, or the ubiquitous access. And so I'm happy to be standby here. But in any event, I think the question was about the education programming, and obviously the education applications are essential to broadband. And I think we're seeing that with the COVID-19 pandemic, and more and more students working remotely, and you need to have that high-speed bandwidth, and also the reliability that goes with it. And affordability is increasingly a concern as well. And so, from our standpoint, we want to make strong partnerships with our education stakeholders throughout the state. First of all, there was an incredible investment in the Illinois Century Network, which is over 2,000 miles of fiber connecting our schools and our college campuses, and ensuring that they have access to the fastest internet that basically is available in the world. And so that's really important, is that when you're at the school on campus, that you've got both for you as a student or a teacher, you've got access to high-speed, reliable bandwidth, but also for a school district or a college, you have the certainty of being able to know, hey, this is going to be serving our classrooms and our campuses well into the future. We know that it's going to be with us. And so that's testament to Governor Pritzker and the General Assembly for investing in that and maintaining it and renewing that in those connections. So beyond that, I think it's really important for us to look at, building partnerships with the State Board of Education, with Illinois Extension. We've had several different webinar series talking about broadband, and so we really think that that's important, just to elevate the dialogue and make sure that we're not operating in a vacuum at the Office of Broadband, but rather we're reaching out, trying to forge coalitions, And you can't always act on everything, but unless you're talking and striving towards partnership, you're not going to be able to pounce when the opportunity arises to act. And so that's really, really important. It's something that we take really seriously is that engagement continually around the state. And so I think as we kind of come back to the current environment we're in right now, it's incredibly important, for our schools and for our students and our teachers and our families to have access at home just to get through this remote, learning, period. And we don't know how long it's going to last. But I suspect that elements of remote learning will be with us, more into the future than they have been prior to the pandemic. And so how are we able to establish best practices, ensure that there truly are no families or households or teachers, left behind here that are not able to connect with broadband? They're in a UPS truck. In any event, so I think the point is we really want to make sure that we're forging those partnerships, that we're investing in education, and that for instance, with the CARES Act funding that's coming into the state of Illinois for our school districts, and for whatever broadband investments made next that's focused on education, that we're striking the right balance between addressing immediate needs, but also setting ourselves in a position so that we're able to build on that momentum moving forward. And I think that's, I'll just say, from my perspective, that's an intriguing aspect of what we're seeing with Chicago Connected and the approach there, not just thinking about the immediate term, but trying to bridge that gap to a more sustained, solution. And of course, it's a lot easier said than done, but I think that kind of thinking is the sort of thinking that's going to serve us well. It's not easy, but that's what we need to strive towards. And that's certainly the approach that we're taking with the Office of Broadband. Sorry, that was really long. I'll try to be shorter next time.
Well, you said you used to be a state senator, right?
Well, I can filibuster.
that works. That helps. Okay, so you mentioned the CARES Act, and my follow-up question was going to be related to COVID-19.
Yeah.
How difficult is it to maintain your implementation schedule in this environment of COVID-19, and have you had to pivot at all?
And if that's for the Office of Broadband, I'll tell you this. This is a topic that I'm passionate about, been working on for a long time. March 2020 hit, and it seemed like everybody was concerned about broadband and broadband solutions now. And of course, I welcome the focus on an issue that I love. I wish the circumstances were different, and I wish that we could. I wish that we could maybe catch our breath a little bit and be able to plan this out a little more. But the whole point here is, Illinois is so well prepared, I think, to be able to make strategic long-term investments because of the focus on the Connect Illinois Broadband Grant Program and the relating program that goes with that through the Office of Broadband. And then at the same time, take advantage of CARES Act dollars, for instance, to direct those towards more short-term or immediate, fixes, so to speak. And so I'm really optimistic that we're able to strike the right balance here in Illinois. It doesn't mean that it's smooth or that it just happens overnight. I mean, this is a process that we have to work, and we've got to be really serious about getting it right. But I think that we're well positioned to be able to be a leader both in the short term and the long term when it comes to broadband. And that's something that I tell myself, I think that that's a good place to be. Not all states are in that position, and so it's a good situation. But that being said, we have a lot of work to do. And you look at our connectivity map, or you look at some of the challenges that we're facing, in just the neighborhoods that are part of our Illinois Connected Communities program. Val, we're experiencing some of those right now on the phone here.
Right.
And so the question is how do we try to put our finger on those problems and get towards solutions as quick as we can? Because we've got to be able to have affordable, reliable broadband now. It's a necessity.
Now, right as we speak.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like the last half hour, right?
Okay, now Matt, we got a question from Leighton Olson. I'm going to highlight his question. It says, could you address partnerships with community colleges as community hubs for education, health, training, distance learning, and annual broadband outreach calendars?
Yeah, I think there's a real opportunity here for kind of taking the next step with these partnerships that I spoke of just a moment ago and formalizing some of those approaches. And I think, you talk a little bit about, gathering information, taking an assessment of where you are, tracking progress over time, and also bridging I don't want to call it a gap. It's not necessarily a gap, but making sure that you're aligning your resources at the state level with the on the ground expertise and know-how at the local level that I think is so pivotal in terms of getting things done and doing it the right way. And so I think the example that Leighton brings up, it makes a lot of sense to me. And so that we're not operating from an office of broadband, sitting in, this isn't academia, so we don't have an ivory tower. I'm not sure where that ivory tower exists, but the point is we're not in it. And we want to make sure that everything we're doing is connected really closely to folks on the ground in the community, whether it's in Chicago or spread across the state. Solutions have to make sense at the local level. And I think that, again, that kind of engagement that Leighton spoke to, I think that's the sort of thing that's going to help ensure that we have success.
Okay.
Yeah, I have to appreciate that as a community organizer, that they definitely like to engage with the communities and the organizations that can get the communities to the table. That was a plus for us.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And Val, I have not forgotten, but I'm gonna take Dr. Sauget's question, and then I'll come back to you, and you can answer 2 questions when we come back. Okay. All right. So
okay, let's cross our fingers.
Okay. All righty. So Dr. Sauget, I read where the Leadership Council Southwest Illinois hosted Senator Durbin during your recent board meeting, and he addressed a number of broadband issues, especially as it relates to COVID-19. So during this talk, he talked about current and proposed legislation, including the Broadband Data Act, the Internet Access Equity Act, and the Emergency Educational Connections Act. Can you share a little highlight? I'm not asking you to give us a legislative rundown, but just the highlights of those 3.
Oh, sure. Well, thank you for asking about that. So we did have Senator Durbin as our board of directors speaker, which was phenomenal, and his commitment to broadband capabilities and how he plans to help as we are working with the Illinois Connected Communities Grant and planning our, regional priorities as an outcome of that and advocating for solutions. One of the big things that's so important is the Federal Communications Commission needs to have more accurate maps for broadband, and that's a big deal. So Senator Durbin co-sponsored the Broadband Data Act to ensure that passed. It's been signed into law to overhaul that mapping process and create better geographic identification for areas that are covered and not covered. And it's really hard to strategically plan if you don't know who has access, who doesn't. And the maps today are just not reliable. So that's a huge, big part of our strategic planning initiative moving forward. So we're really excited about that. 2 other important pieces of legislation he mentioned was the Computer and Internet Access Equity Act, which really extends the FCC's lifetime program of subsidizing monthly broadband and telephone service for low-income households up to a $10,000 cap for technology purchases. And that's really important to provide, that type of support. Another legislative piece that he co-sponsored was called the Emergency Educational Connections Act, which provides the FCC E-rate program with $4 billion for schools and libraries to support hotspots, modems, routers, internet connectivity devices, which is especially important during this pandemic to have those types of support. So the Computer Internet Accessibility Act and the Emergency Educational Connections Act currently going through Congress, and we're going to think happy thoughts because those 2 are essentially needed to help set the foundation for us to move forward. So we just applaud Senator Durbin and other senators who are working on this and their commitment to broadband, because we need it in all of our communities, not only here in Illinois, but across the country, but especially in Illinois. So we're just really excited to have him working on that specifically.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. All right, Val.
Well, I've managed to stay on a good 5 minutes, right?
Yes. So if you can finish telling us about your planning process and who's engaged and all that good stuff. And then we'll go into your next question.
Okay. Right. So our partners are, like I said, our churches. We have individuals that have coalitions of the, same types of organizations. So Reverend Turner he has a coalition of churches. The South Shore Chamber has a coalition of businesses. We have the coalition of Block Club leaders and community members all together. So we're all working together. And then different nonprofits like Lost Boys, they have children, they have youth. So we're bringing them in at this point to make sure that we have a youth voice in this as well. And that's pretty much the solid of it. But the thing that I like the most is, as we are looking at this from a block by block level and tapping into the human capital on the block, we're finding more people who think about technology, work in technology, that give really good input. I mean, you can't get any better than that team right there. I'm sorry. In terms of like finding people who want to volunteer and actually give their input on what it should feel like and the concerns that they have that most people.
Okay. So it looks like we lost Val again. Sorry about that. Wow. I think this is a great demonstration. Oh, she's back.
Okay, you get to the next question really quick before.
All right. So the next question is concerning your unique approach. I think your approach is unique in that you're not only bridging the digital divide, but you're bringing in people of different ages. Can you describe that process, how you're engaging young people?
Well, right now we're working with Lost Boys, but our overall project in South Shore, we have an organizing strategy, which is a pilot that we would like to go out into the other parts of Chicago. But right now we take a 15 to 40 block radius.
Okay. Wow. So let's give her a couple minutes. She should hopefully, yeah. All righty. You're back.
Yay. Well, we create networks so that we can identify the next generation of leaders. As I stated earlier, most people may not realize they look at block clubs as a power base. We don't really see it as a power base because it's an aging power base, meaning our elders are getting to a point where they don't really want to get as active as they used to be, or they can't be as active. They're moving, their spouses are passing away, or either they're passing away. The energy that needs to maintain and stabilize the community is not there anymore. So we create these networks. And in that, in this case, we have a technology network. So youth, Generation Xers.
Okay. Hopefully she'll be back very soon. And yeah, she's back.
Everything. Okay. If they're interested in technology, they should give us a call. So, yeah. So, that's how we're looking at it. Like, instead of just getting the same old people that generally come to the meetings, we really are looking at making sure we get new people by saying, hey, you're interested in technology? Would you like to be a part of a network of technology geeks in South Shore? This is your opportunity to be a part of a larger network, and you can benefit from this, not just from a community standpoint, but also a professional standpoint, because all of you all are in the room talking to each other and pulling your resources together and all of that.
Okay. So that's great. So you actually get more attendance at those meetings than the block club meetings.
Oh, of course. More done.
All righty. Well, thank you so much, Val. Thank you. I
Thank you
really
for allowing me to participate. I apologize for my embarrassing internet system. I hope we can resolve that by May 2021 as well.
We got to do something about that.
yes. Thank you.
Mhm.
And Matt, for the past couple weeks, we've had guests here talking about, the intersection of education and
Right.
broadband and making sure that the kids had the proper technology. And one of the issues that came out was to make sure that we had more formalized networks. And one suggestion was leveraging the power of local districts, the U of I, extension programs, local college districts. And when I say local districts, I'm talking about the school districts. What role can your office play in making this happen?
Yeah, I think this question kind of builds upon the question from Leighton a moment ago, and I think it's really important for us to make those strong connections to the local level, and for us to gather good information, whether it's quantitative or qualitative. Those anecdotal stories, they are so important in my experience to shining a light on the problems in broadband and to making them the solutions a reality. For instance, the idea of students doing their schoolwork huddle around a McDonald's, hotspot, in a parking lot, for instance, or, at another, local establishment, just trying to get bandwidth however they can. And so I think that those sorts of anecdotes are powerful. And so you pair that with good data, and we spoke a moment ago about getting good data for mapping. That's really important too. And so you tell that story about where we are and where we want to go. But I think a lot of the solutions, in fact, I know this, the solutions to our problems with broadband are really going to emanate from the local level. You look at our broadband grant program, that $400 million infrastructure program. It's not the state dictating solutions, but rather it's saying, hey, we're a facilitator. We have some funds. We'd like to be partners with local communities or our broadband providers that are willing to invest in the future. And so we want to hear the best ideas that can come from, a notice of funding opportunity that we put out there with some parameters around it. And so we want to make really strong investments that are geared for the long term, but they have to be built on local energy and kind of an approach that ideally is rooted in the community and it reflects that community's vision for its own broadband future. And so that's why come back to this Illinois Connected Communities program. That's why I think that sort of effort is really important. So if we're doing that sort of outreach and engagement at the local level, whether it's neighborhoods in Chicago or it's counties or communities in between, heck, even regional planning organizations, the whole point is, these sorts of conversations need to be happening at those local levels. And I think they feed up to more planning and information gathering efforts at maybe a regional level. And that's the kind of approach that I think is going to help us take a real good inventory of where we are, line that up with where we want to go in goal setting and making targeted investments along the way. And it's all built on partnerships and kind of making those connections between, the public and private nonprofit sectors and also, different levels of government. We talked about, Senator Durbin and, the staff out in Washington. So important for us to stay in touch with them so that we have alignment between what's happening in the federal government, what the state's doing, and it's responsive to actual concerns and challenges at the local level. Otherwise, we're taking our best shot at trying to direct, resources and programming in a way that may or may not make a difference if we're not staying close to the community conversation. So I get really excited about this stuff. So I think that it's really important for us to start at that point and build out.
Okay. Now, I know you have an advisory council for the grant program. Are there any grassroots organizations that are represented on that task force or the advisory council?
Yeah, so this is the Broadband Advisory Council, and there are 25 members. 21 of them are voting members, so to speak, and we have, I guess, ex officio members from each of the four legislative caucuses. We got 2 senators, two members from the General Assembly. And so if you look at the 21 voting members, about a third of those are from industry. And so you could be a wireless provider or a satellite provider, maybe a traditional telco or a cable company. And so we have about 7 members serving in that capacity. Another third of that, the non-voting slate, is from state government. And so you may have directors from one state agency or department or another. I know that we think that there's some real strong connections to aging, for instance, and broadband. And so we want to make sure that we're taking those connections real seriously. So we had a lot of conversations with Director Basta about, getting the most out of our broadband policy and investment accordingly. And then the final third, if you will, would be, community or interest that might align with broadband one way or another. And so you have the AARP, for instance, at the table. We also have the essentially the Illinois Commerce Commission, our Public Utilities Commission, that has a regulatory role. We have libraries are part of the conversation. And so the composition of the Illinois Broadband Advisory Council was put in place back in 2019. It was actually, appointed members last August. And so we've been meeting for about a year now, putting together aspects of our broadband strategic plan. And it's a really good venue for us to share information with key stakeholders at the state level. But, that I think I would emphasize that's one aspect of the conversation. We also are really interested in that local level and pairing other perspectives to the decision-making or advisory process. And so we have broken out in the past into working groups that have dealt with such issues as education and remote learning, telehealth, economic development. And that's something that I was planning on doing this past summer, but then with the pandemic, we've directed our energies, I think, more towards immediate need versus policy conversations that might be more longer term in scope. But the whole point is we want to use the Broadband Advisory Council as a way for putting our finger on good ideas, best practice, developing policy that matches with our investment. And so that our Office of Broadband isn't simply, a grants administration, arm of our Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity for broadband, but rather it's, as I said at the outset, a holistic approach to really addressing the various aspects of broadband: access, affordability, adoption and use or utilization.
Okay, great. Now, what I didn't hear in the list of people were some of the emerging organizations or local residents. How do you make sure that their voices are heard at the policy level?
Yeah. No, this is such a great question, because I think that that's something that we really strive towards. And I think everything I've said over the last 45 minutes, is consistent with this. But how do you put it in a structure? How do you complete it in the process? And so I'm really excited. In the coming weeks, we'll be announcing our digital equity programming.
Okay, awesome.
It builds on its infrastructure funding. It builds on this community planning and capacity building effort. And it's a whole nother layer to our office in our work. We're just not at the stage right now where we're making announcements live on a Monday morning, but in the coming weeks, we're going to have some news. And I think that this is one really, really important, avenue for us, to kind of double down on that equity aspect of broadband and elevate the voices of folks who might maybe kind of falling through the cracks, whether it's broadband access, adoption, utilization. And so I'm really looking forward to launching that program. It's just not quite ready to go public yet. So there's your teaser for the day. Stay tuned, everybody.
Yes. They heard it here first.
That's right. Yeah, you did.
Oh, okay, great. All right, Dr. Sauget, I know you guys also have a foundation. How does the foundation work with the Leadership Council?
Oh, absolutely. So we have the Southern Illinois Development Foundation that's very closely aligned with helping children and students educational programs and also community equity issues in Southwestern Illinois, underserved communities, both rural and urban. And as part of that, we speak to about 40,000 students every year in terms of talking about in-demand careers, STEM, technical education, construction, trade, cybersecurity, and many others. As part of this effort with COVID, we had a lot of our educators reach out to us and say, do you have any videos, other materials that we can access electronically And so what we decided to do was develop a virtual library with our foundation to provide those students and parents with quality materials that were easy to find. And so we're working on that process right now with our education community to make online learning more enriching. We have a lot of librarians who are reading stories to children that parents could pull up in the evening and have a librarian read to your child, because parents and teachers are stressed and they're looking for great materials that's quality, that's easy for the students to access, to add value to that curriculum. And so we're working really hard with our education community to do that. But the main thing is that you have to be able to connect to it. So broadband is so important.
Yes.
You can develop a virtual library, but if you can't get there, it's really hard. And so the two initiatives really go well hand in hand. And so we have a lot of industry partners working on the virtual library, and we always invite more. But bringing it all together, if we don't have good broadband access, all of those educators and students and parents won't be able to come together and really, benefit from all of that. So foundation helps us to do those things, and it all comes together as kind of a big ecosystem of trying to address things that are important for our community.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Valerie, just a question about the local planning infrastructure in South Shore. Are you guys working with any planning body in South Shore to try to make sure that your digital divide plan supports ongoing planning?
No, not at this time. The planning body is the community at this point, and we have all our partners right there. We have reached out to the City of Chicago Department of Planning to help in terms of that. I don't know what the status is, but the last I heard, they were interested, but we haven't seen anything come out of it just this point. But yeah, we are going to make sure that the community has a voice. That's really our main focus, is that on a hyper local level, that there's input on what's happening, and that we can do our own mapping, because what's on your block, what's in your area. However, the goal is to come up with a plan and then find the funding to execute the plans that we have out of there.
Okay. Now, are you guys also looking at, I guess, quality of life types of goals, like improving the business infrastructure and improving public safety and that kind of stuff? And
so
using
right now, we are in partnership with the South Shore Chamber, South Shore Works, and the Neighborhood Network for a quality of life plan through LISC.
Okay.
The Neighborhood Network Alliance is the organization who is responsible for the community engagement piece.
Oh, awesome.
And so with that being said, we are still trying to figure out how we bring both of those plans together, because technology is a quality of life issue at this point.
Yeah, it is.
Maybe no one saw it as that way. Maybe they didn't see, maybe it wasn't such a priority before 2020, but now it's almost like bread and water. I mean, water and food, we have to be able to figure out how we put that into the quality of life plan, just like we would public safety, education, health and wellness. It's what we have to. I can't talk to you right now if this decides it's going to disconnect. So, all of those things make sense. And so it's just a matter of where we merge our lanes. So right now we're working on broadband, a strategic plan for broadband, and the quality of life plan around these other areas, which all affect technology, all of it. I mean, public safety ties into technology, education ties into technology. It's the backbone to all of the other networks and lanes that we are working on.
It's infrastructure, pure and simple.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm sure you'll make the case for raising the priority.
I'm trying. I'm working on it.
All right. So we only have a few minutes left. we've got 4 minutes left, but if I can indulge you guys to stay just a little bit longer, I would love to hear all of your answers on, what some of the lessons you've learned along the way. So Rhonda, we'll start with you.
Well, some of the lessons that we've learned along the way is really to step up and take a strong position for addressing issues that are important to your community. And sometimes that's not an easy process. Sometimes you have to take some risks to be a leader, but it's really important to do that. And if you don't do that, nothing ever really improves. And so, this strategic planning process is going to be a lot of work. It's a lot of effort. It's going to be a lot of people's time. But I don't know how to do it any other way other than to do all of the things that are required to set the priorities for the next step of, addressing the issues and bringing broadband access to all of our communities. Without the tough work, nothing ever really comes out in a positive way. And I think about all the infrastructure projects that we've done, from multimodal to levees to so many other things. Broadband is the next big thing we need to take on. And, it's just going to be an amazing process. And you step on the other side of it and you think about, well, that was a really great thing that we did to get to this place. And so I would just strongly encourage everybody to step up, be empowered, and take on these types of challenges, because the outcome is an amazing thing for your community to move it forward. And the communities in Illinois, as in many places, we need great leaders to do those things. So that would be my lesson learned.
Okay, great. Thank you. And with all those military personnel, I'm sure you guys don't lack leadership.
No, they don't. They keep us on our toes, I can tell you. Absolutely.
Yes, I love working with people with military backgrounds.
Yes. Strong strategic planning. And, I have to tell you that my doctorate area is in strategic planning. So this is kind of my bailiwick. I love doing this. It's fabulous. And just seeing how, it comes out on the other side is an amazing process. And so, to be honest with you, I just love doing this. It's fantastic.
Okay, great. It shows. Okay, Matt, can you share with us your lessons learned from these processes?
Well, sure. And, I'm going to go beyond my year in Illinois. I think just generally, it really builds on what Dr. Sauget said. Be bold. I think those of us who know the challenges we're up against when it comes to connecting everybody with the broadband they need to compete in the 21st century know that time is of the essence and that we can't settle for half measures, that we've really got to lean into this and solve this challenge once and for all. Yes. And I think what's great about the broadband piece is that once you make the big investment in scalable infrastructure, it's going to pay dividends for decades. I come from a transportation background. I believe in investing in transit and roads and bridges.
Yes.
But all of that requires a lot of maintenance. And broadband, it requires maintenance. But the point here is, if we're willing to take that leap and make the investments, it's going to pay dividends well into the future, and at relatively minimal cost for maintaining. And so I'm really, I think excited to be at this point in Illinois where we've seen that bold leadership, on the part of the governor and the General Assembly. We're at a point now where we're implementing that statewide infrastructure investment. And as I keep coming back to, it's a matter of rounding out that approach so that we're getting every last benefit that we can out of that investment, towards digital equity, towards adoption, towards use. That's the way that we get this right. And I don't want to say we're well on our way to that point, but the pieces are coming together, and that's really promising. And now it's a matter of following through, keeping those partnerships growing. And again, in terms of lessons, be bold. Don't take your foot off the pedal. That's what I say.
Yes. Okay, Val.
Sorry, guys. Even Monday morning, I get going.
No, that's fine. These are great lessons. Great lessons. And I really appreciate you guys sharing. Okay, Val, take us on home.
Okay. Well, I think the biggest lesson is, for me, understanding that it is a quality of life issue, which I never thought about before, that, this ties into almost everything we do. So for me, that was one big lesson. The other big lesson was I wasn't the only person struggling with broadband. The more we get the conversation going, you find out that This is not just an individual thing. It's a South Side thing, is what we believe. That there are a lot of inequities. There's a lot of inequities in this business when it comes to access to communications and access to internet. And so those were like my aha moments. And then the piece around how are we managing our children that have to stay home from school, stay home and learn from home.
Right.
How's that being managed? How they're being taken care of, and things like that. And how's that education process being managed is really important, because these are our next generation of leaders. We need to make sure that this process, they're not the guinea pigs for this process, and there's an accountability piece to it.
I love that.
Yeah.
And what I like about this particular conversation, this particular group of people, you're not talking about technology as if it's some nebulous thing out that we can't touch. It really is something that we need to integrate into every aspect of our lives. And
Yes.
Not in a vacuum. Alrighty, I wanted to just share, I believe Leighton had one comment. I want to share his comment before we go. He has two, actually. He says, one model is the Austin Community in Chicago Connected program, seeking additional assistance for working with families, including families and students and school educator triangle digital platforms. And another comment is another Chicago Link resource in DC for Policy. DC for Policy agenda is Nicole Turner-Lee as head of Brookings Technology Programs with long experience in urban and rural background extension. So those were his final, I guess, comments. I don't know if you guys had anything to share before we go as those comments relate.
Well, you are going to give me a chance to filibuster our meeting, so I'm going to stop myself. I just thank you so much for having us and hosting this conversation. It's been a fun start to the week, so thanks.
I really would love to have you guys back, because I think this is a topic worth having people have updates on from time to time. So I'm extending an open invitation, and I hope you guys will accept, from time to time, come back and let us know how you're working it out.
Wonderful. We'd love to.
Okay. All right, great. So I want to thank everybody for joining us, and I want to encourage you to join us on Friday. We're going to be talking about using networks to actually do environmental policy and make sure that we have good, clean communities. So we've got Naomi Davis. She's the founder of Blacks in Green. We've got Alex Score. She's the lead scientist for Echo Adapt. We got Ramona Taylor Williams, Executive Director, Montgomery Citizens United for Prosperity, and Robert Fiskin. He is the Executive Volunteer Match. So all of these guys are going to be coming. They're going to be talking about issues of conservation in urban areas as well as suburban and rural areas. So join us on Friday at 10 o'clock. Same bat time, same bat channel. I guess I'm dating myself now. All right.
I was right there with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you guys again for joining, and I'll be in touch.
Right,
Okay. Thank you for having us.
Okay.
Bye.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.